The crimson-tinged light of Xylos's twin suns filtered through the dense canopy of the whispering woods, casting ethereal patterns across the forest floor. Lyra moved silently among the massive trunks of ancient trees, her footsteps leaving no trace on the soft moss beneath. Her lithe form blended with the shadows as she tracked her prey, the sunstone glaive in her hand catching occasional glints of light that danced across its polished surface. 19 marks adorned her right forearm, each one etched in a ceremony that celebrated a life taken in defense of her people. 19 marks that had earned her the title of First Blade among the Cathar tribe. 19 marks that had made her a legend. Today, she hunted for the 20th. The fallen TerraCorp transport vessel had torn through the sacred canopy of the Whispering Woods 3 days ago, leaving a trail of broken branches and scorched earth. The Elder's command had been clear: cleanse the area, eliminate any survivors. Outsiders could not be allowed to return with knowledge of the Cathar or their territories. It was the way it had always been. Lyra had already found 4 bodies in the wreckage, 2 dead on impact, 2 barely clinging to life before her glaive silenced their pain. But there was another. The trail of blood spoke of a survivor with determination, someone who had dragged themselves away from the crash despite serious injuries, someone who refused to surrender to death. She paused at the edge of a small clearing, her keen eyes spotting a disturbance in the undergrowth. Crouching, she examined a torn leaf, the residue of strange medical adhesive glistening on its surface. Her prey was attempting to treat his wounds. A futile effort, but one that showed resourcefulness. Lyra felt a flicker of respect. This one would be worthy of becoming her 20th mark. As the blue sun began to set, leaving only its yellow twin to illuminate the forest, Lyra caught her first glimpse of him. A man, his TerraCorp uniform torn and bloodied, was huddled beside a shallow stream. His back was to her as he carefully cleaned a deep gash on his arm. Dark hair matted with sweat and blood, shoulders tense with pain, but movements deliberate, controlled. She approached silently, sunstone glaive ready. This would be quick and merciful, as befitted a worthy opponent. But as she stepped into the clearing, her foot dislodged a small stone. The tiny sound was enough. The man spun around, his eyes widening at the sight of her painted face and ceremonial weapon. Instead of fear or resignation, though, his expression showed something unexpected: recognition. "You're Cathar," he said, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. "I've read about your people in the restricted archives." Lyra hesitated. Outsiders were not supposed to know of the Cathar. Their existence on Xylos was hidden, protected. "I am Elias Thorne," he continued, slowly raising his hands to show he held no weapon. "I'm a geologist with TerraCorp's research division. I'm not here to harm your world." Lyra stepped forward, the point of her glaive aimed at his heart. "It does not matter why you came. You have seen us. That knowledge dies with you." Elias reached slowly into his pocket, causing Lyra to tense, but he merely withdrew a small device. "Translation matrix," he explained, the device flickering with damage. "Not working properly, but I want to understand." "To talk." "There is nothing to talk about," Lyra replied, though curiosity gnawed at her. The elders had taught that outsiders were destructive, mindless in their greed. This one seemed different. "Your people have lived on Xylos for generations," Elias said, wincing as he shifted position. "You've adapted to this world in ways that shouldn't be biologically possible for humanoids. That's remarkable." A moment of silence stretched between them, interrupted only by the distant calls of nocturnal creatures awakening in the forest. Lyra's glaive remained steady, but she didn't strike. "You should have killed me already," Elias observed quietly. "I decide when my prey dies," Lyra responded, though the truth was more complex. Something held her back, a feeling she couldn't identify. A distant rumble of thunder broke the moment. Lyra glanced up at the darkening sky. A storm approaches. The yellow sun will soon set. The creatures of night in these woods are far more dangerous than I am. "Then I'm dead either way," Elias said with surprising calmness. Lyra made her decision. "Run," she commanded. If you survive until morning, you will have earned another day. Confusion crossed Elias's face, but survival instinct overcame it. He gathered his meager supplies and disappeared into the undergrowth. Lyra watched him go, troubled by her own actions. She had never given prey a chance before. As lightning flashed overhead, Lyra found shelter beneath a massive fallen trunk. The hunt would continue tomorrow. She told herself it was merely to make the final kill more satisfying, but deep within, she recognized an unfamiliar sensation: doubt. The storm unleashed its fury upon the whispering woods. Torrential rain bent the smaller trees, and wind howled through the canopy like the voices of angry spirits. Lyra remained dry in her shelter, but her thoughts offered no such comfort. The face of Elias Thorne kept appearing in her mind, his words echoing, "I'm not here to harm your world." Could an outsider truly understand the concept of respect for Xylos? The elders had always taught that the corporations saw planets only as resources to be consumed. Yet Elias had spoken of the Cthar with something akin to admiration. Morning arrived with the glow of twin suns piercing through dissipating clouds. Lyra emerged from her shelter, stretching her limbs before reclaiming her sunstone glaive. The trail would be harder to follow after the storm, but she was Cthar's finest hunter. It took less than an hour to pick up Elias's trail again. He had moved surprisingly far despite his injuries, navigating the treacherous terrain with unexpected skill. The path led her to a rocky outcropping above a sea of mist-covered trees. Blood stains on the stone told her he had rested here, likely trying to gain his bearings. A small movement in the undergrowth drew her attention. Not her prey, but a young vine-stalker, a small reptilian creature native to Xylos, its leg entangled in debris from the storm. Most outsiders would have killed such a creature for food or ignored its plight entirely. Yet as Lyra approached, she found evidence that shocked her. Someone had carefully freed the creature, using strips of fabric matching Elias's uniform, to bind its injured leg. The vine-stalker was gone, but the care taken in treating it was unmistakable. Lyra's fingers traced the expert binding. Why would an outsider waste precious resources and time helping a creature of no value to him? It contradicted everything she had been taught. The trail led downward, into a region of the forest known for its treacherous caves and hidden sinkholes. Elias was either incredibly foolish or unexpectedly knowledgeable about the terrain. Either way, he was proving to be the most interesting prey she had ever hunted. By midday, Lyra found him at the edge of a small pool fed by an underground spring. He was feverish, his treated wounds showing signs of infection despite his care. Yet he worked methodically, using local plants to create a poultice. Some of his choices surprised her. He was selecting plants the Cthar themselves used for medicine. "Your fever worsens," Lyra said, stepping into the clearing. "The red moss you seek grows on the north side of the stones, not the south." Elias looked up, somehow unsurprised by her appearance. "I thought you might be watching. Is the hunt over, then?" "You continue to intrigue me," she admitted. "You helped the vine-stalker. It was injured. I couldn't just leave it suffering." He gestured to the forest around them. "This world, it's magnificent. The biodiversity here exceeds anything we've encountered in this sector of space. Did you know the plants in this region alone produce compounds that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy?" Lyra approached, her glaive lowered but still in hand. "You speak of Xylos as though it's precious to you." "Because it is," Elias replied, his eyes bright with fever but sincere. "That's why I became a geologist, to understand worlds, not to exploit them. Not everyone at TerraCorp shares that vision, but some of us are fighting to change the company's approach." A distant howl interrupted their conversation. Lyra recognized it immediately, a pack of shadow stalkers, drawn by the scent of blood and weakness. They would arrive within the hour. "Can you climb?" she asked abruptly. Elias attempted to stand, grimacing with pain. "Not in this condition." Lyra made a decision that would forever alter her path. She secured her glaive and helped Elias to his feet. "Then we must find shelter before they come." Together, they moved deeper into the forest, Lyra supporting much of Elias's weight. She guided them to a small cave she knew well, one with a narrow entrance that could be defended against predators. Once inside, she gathered specific plants from just outside the cave's mouth, crushing them into a paste that she applied to Elias's infected wounds. "Why are you helping me?" he asked as the medicine began to ease his pain. Lyra sat back, considering the question herself. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "Perhaps because you are not what I expected." As night fell, Elias's fever broke. He slept, more peaceful than before, while Lyra kept watch at the cave entrance. The shadow stalkers prowled outside, their forms barely visible in the darkness, but they could not pass the narrow opening. Lyra studied the sleeping outsider. Tomorrow she should complete her mission. The 20th mark was rightfully hers to claim. Yet the thought brought no satisfaction now. When morning came, Elias awoke to find Lyra preparing a simple meal from forest plants. "Eat," she instructed. "You need strength." "For what?" he asked cautiously. "The continuation of the hunt." "I have decided that you are not prey," she stated simply. "Not at this moment." Elias accepted the food, his eyes never leaving her face. "What changed your mind?" "You understand Xylos," she replied after a long pause. "Few of my own people truly understand it as you seem to." As they ate, Elias activated his damaged datapad, showing her three-dimensional recordings he had made of Xylos' ecosystems before the crash. The images floated between them, intricate representations of plants, animals, and geological formations, all cataloged with notes that spoke of wonder and respect. "This is how I see your world," he explained. "Not as resources to extract, but as systems to understand. Knowledge that could benefit everyone, including the Kthar, if you would allow it." Lyra's fingers passed through a holographic image of a flowering plant unique to the Whispering Woods. "Our elders say that outsiders bring only destruction." "Some do," Elias acknowledged, "but not all of us. There's a growing movement within TerraCorp pushing for research over exploitation, especially on worlds with indigenous populations." Their conversation was interrupted by a sound that made Lyra tense. The unmistakable pattern of Kthar footsteps approaching the cave. She motioned for Elias to remain silent and moved to the entrance, glaive ready. Rorik stood outside, his hunter's garb marking him as one of her own tribe. Younger than Lyra, ambitious, his eyes widened at the sight of her. "First Blade," he greeted, with a formality that didn't mask his suspicion. "The elders sent me to find you. The cleansing mission was to be completed 2 days ago. Tell them the outsider was difficult to track after the storm," Lyra replied evenly. "I will return with the 20th mark when my hunt is complete." Rorik's gaze shifted past her to the cave interior. "You've already found him. I can smell the outsider's blood." His expression hardened with realization. "You're protecting him." Lyra stepped forward, placing herself between Rorik and the cave entrance. "Return to the village, Rorik. Tell the elders the hunt continues." "You've broken our most sacred law," Rorik said, his hand moving to his own weapon. "The punishment is exile or death." "I've broken no law yet," Lyra countered. "The hunt is mine to conduct as I see fit." "Then complete it," Rorik challenged, his voice rising. "Kill the outsider now, before me, and I will speak nothing of this delay." Lyra could sense Elias tensing behind her, preparing for the worst. She had seconds to decide, and the choice would irrevocably alter her life. Her movement was fluid, precise, the result of years of training. The blunt end of her glaive struck Rorik's temple with just enough force to render him unconscious without causing permanent damage. He crumpled to the ground, surprise frozen on his face. "We must move quickly," Lyra told Elias, already gathering their few supplies. "When he wakes, he will return to the village. The elders will send others." "Where can we go?" Elias asked, struggling to his feet. "There's a place," Lyra replied, her voice distant with memory. "A sacred region where few Kthar venture. We may find temporary safety there." They traveled through the day, pushing deeper into parts of the Whispering Woods that few ever visited. The trees grew larger here, more ancient, their massive roots creating natural archways and hidden paths. By nightfall, they reached a series of stone formations that rose like ancient sentinels from the forest floor. "What is this place?" Elias asked, voice hushed with wonder. "The ancestors' pillars," Lyra explained. "Created before even the Cthar came to this world. Some say they were built by the original inhabitants of Xylos. An earlier civilization?" Elias's face lit with excitement despite his exhaustion. "There's no record of that in any TerraCorp database, because it is known only to the Cthar, and now to you," Lyra replied. She guided him to a small structure built into the base of one of the stone pillars, a shelter of some kind, its entrance almost invisible among the rocks. Inside, they found a space untouched by time. Ancient carvings covered the walls, depicting strange beings and celestial events. "Why bring me here?" Elias asked softly, understanding the significance of what she was sharing. "Because this place holds truth," Lyra answered. "It shows that change has always been part of Xylos, that different beings have called this world home. The elders rarely speak of this place because it contradicts their teaching that only the Cthar are meant to live here." As Elias studied the carvings with fascination, Lyra kept watch at the entrance. She had betrayed her people's trust, attacked another hunter, and revealed a sacred site to an outsider. There would be no forgiveness from the elders, no way to reclaim her position. Yet watching Elias trace the ancient symbols with reverence, she couldn't bring herself to regret her choices. "These markings," Elias murmured, "they show a cosmic event, twin suns aligning with a third celestial body. A convergence that happens only once every 1,000 years. Lyra joined him by the wall. "The Night of Three Lights. Our oldest stories speak of it. According to my calculations, it's due to happen again within the next year," Elias said. "Does that have significance for your people?" "It marks a time of great change," Lyra replied. "The last convergence was when the Cthar first pledged ourselves to Xylos as its protectors. Their conversation was cut short by the distant sound of ceremonial horns, the gathering call of Cthar hunters preparing for a major hunt. Rorik has reached the village," Lyra said grimly. "Forlag will lead them here. Forlag, the elder who trained me, the keeper of our oldest traditions." Lyra's face hardened. "He will view my actions as the ultimate betrayal." Through the night, they prepared as best they could. Elias's condition had improved dramatically thanks to Lyra's treatments, but he was still no match for trained Cthar hunters. Their only advantages were Lyra's intimate knowledge of the terrain and Elias's technological skills. Working with components salvaged from his damaged equipment, Elias constructed a crude but functional sonic disruptor. "Cthar hunters rely on sound to coordinate during hunts, right?" he asked as he worked. "This should create enough interference to confuse them temporarily." Lyra nodded, impressed by his insight. "It may give us the moments we need." Dawn brought no hunters, but Lyra knew they were coming. The Cthar never rushed a hunt. They planned, positioned, and then closed in with deadly precision. By midday, she could sense their presence in the forest around the stone formations. At least 10 hunters, led by Forlag himself. "They're surrounding us," she told Elias. "The main approach will come from the east, where the terrain favors larger numbers. Then we head west," Elias suggested. Lyra shook her head. "They'll expect that. Our path lies through the center of the ancestors' pillars. There's a ravine beyond that leads to higher ground." As they emerged from their shelter, movement caught Lyra's eye. A glimpse of ceremonial paint among the trees. The hunters were closing in faster than expected. She gestured for Elias to follow as they slipped between the massive stone columns. The first attack came swiftly. A junior hunter leapt from behind a pillar, weapon raised. Lyra parried the blow with her glaive, spinning to strike him with the blunt, and just as she had done with Rorik. The young hunter fell, but his attack had served its purpose, alerting the others to their location. "Run!" Lyra commanded, and they sprinted deeper into the maze of stone. Hunters converged from multiple directions. Lyra fought defensively, careful to disable rather than kill her former tribe mates. Elias activated his sonic disruptor, and the high-pitched wail sent the closest hunters reeling backward, their sensitive hearing overwhelmed. They nearly reached the ravine when Forelag himself stepped into their path. The elder hunter's face was a mask of cold fury, his ceremonial glaive gleaming in the dappled sunlight. "First blade no more," he pronounced, his deep voice carrying across the clearing. "You bring shame to the 19 marks you bear." Lyra straightened, her grip on her own glaive firm but non-threatening. "I bring a new understanding, Elder. This outsider is not our enemy. All outsiders threaten our way of life," Forelag countered. "This is the teaching of generations. A teaching that may have served us once, but blinds us now," Lyra replied. "Xylos faces new dangers that require new allies." Forelag's eyes narrowed. "You speak of alliance with those who would strip our world bare? Not all seek to destroy." Lyra gestured to Elias. "Some seek to understand, to preserve." "Pretty word from a pretty deceiver," Forelag spat. He leveled his glaive at Elias. "Prove your loyalty, Lyra. Complete your hunt. Claim your 20th mark, and perhaps the council will show mercy." The moment crystallized around them. Lyra standing between her past and a possible future, Elias tense but trusting behind her, Forelag and the gathering hunters representing everything she had once aspired to be. "I cannot," she said clearly, her voice carrying to all present. "Not because I am weak, but because I now see strength in a different path." "Then you choose death alongside him," Forelag declared. He signaled, and the hunters began to close in from all sides. Lyra moved into a defensive stance, positioning herself to protect. "Elias, I choose life," she corrected. "For Xylos, for the Cthar, and for those who would stand with us rather than against us." The clash was violent and swift. Hunters attacked from multiple angles, but Lyra's skill was unmatched. She parried blows, redirected attacks, and disabled opponents without inflicting serious harm. Elias used his disruptor strategically, creating confusion that allowed them to gradually work their way toward the ravine. Forelag, however, was not so easily overcome. The elder hunter pressed his attack relentlessly, forcing Lyra into an increasingly desperate defense. His experience matched her youth and agility, and his rage gave him strength she could not counter. In a critical moment, Forelag's glaive slipped past her guard. Elias shouted a warning, pushing Lyra aside and taking a glancing blow to his shoulder. The injury wasn't serious, but the sight of Elias's blood renewed Forelag's fury. "You would die for her?" the elder snarled. "For a betrayer? For someone who can see beyond hatred," Elias answered, pressing his hand to his bleeding shoulder. Forelag laughed coldly. "Then die together." He raised his glaive for a killing blow. Lyra intercepted the strike with her own weapon. The two glaives met with a crystalline sound that echoed across the stone pillars. For a moment they were locked together, student and teacher, past and present. Then, with a sickening crack, Lyra's sunstone glaive shattered. The ancient weapon, passed down through generations of first blades, broke into glittering fragments that scattered across the forest floor. A collective gasp rose from the watching hunters. The breaking of a sunstone glaive was an omen, a sign of terrible change. Even Forelag hesitated, momentary uncertainty replacing his rage. In that frozen moment, a new sound cut through the forest, the unmistakable hum of engines. A TerraCorp shuttle descended into the clearing, its powerful lights sweeping across the assembled Cthar. "Elias Thorne," a voice called over an amplified speaker. "Respond if you can hear us." The unexpected arrival created instant chaos. Some hunters retreated into the forest, while others raised weapons defensively. Forelag stood his ground, his face a mixture of fury and disbelief. A woman emerged from the shuttle, flanked by security personnel who maintained a defensive position but did not raise weapons. Her uniform marked her as an officer of high rank. "I am Commander Eva Rostova," she announced. "We've been tracking the emergency beacon from our crashed vessel." Elias stepped forward, still supporting his injured shoulder. "Commander, your timing is impeccable. Rostova's eyes moved from Elias to Lyra, then to the assembled Kthar hunters. I see we've made first contact with the indigenous population. Wasn't in the mission parameters, Thorn. Circumstances forced my hand, Elias replied. He gestured to Lyra. This is Lyra of the Kthar. She saved my life, at great cost to herself. Forlag stepped forward, his broken glaive still held tightly. You bring more outsiders to our sacred land. The betrayal deepens. Elder Forlag, Lyra addressed him formally. TerraCorp is already here on Xylos. We cannot prevent that, but perhaps we can shape how they interact with our world. Rostova assessed the situation with a calculating gaze. TerraCorp has strict protocols for worlds with indigenous sentient life. Had we known of your existence, our approach would have been different. You would still take what is not yours, Forlag accused. Perhaps once, Rostova conceded. But policies are changing. Exploitation without consent is becoming too costly, politically and financially. For hours, an uneasy discussion unfolded in the shadow of the ancient stone pillars. Rostova, representing TerraCorp's interests, proposed a limited presence focused on research rather than extraction. Mining operations would be restricted to uninhabited regions far from Kthar territories. In exchange, TerraCorp would gain access to study Xylos' unique ecosystems under supervision. Who would ensure you honor such terms? Forlag demanded, still suspicious. A representative of your choosing, Rostova suggested. Someone who understands both worlds. All eyes turned to Lyra, standing tall despite the fragments of her broken glaive at her feet. I am no longer Kthar, she said softly. Forlag has made that clear. You will always be Kthar, a new voice spoke. Rorik stepped forward, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. But perhaps you could be something more as well. A bridge between worlds. Forlag's face remained hard, but some of the younger hunters nodded in agreement with Rorik's words. The elder finally spoke, his voice heavy with reluctance. The breaking of a sunstone glaive heralds great change. Perhaps this is the change it foretold. He turned to Lyra. You are cast out from the village, from your position as First Blade. But if you would serve as this bridge, the Kthar will listen. As the twin sons began their descent, casting long shadows through the forest, agreements were tentatively formed. TerraCorp would establish a research station at the edge of Kthar territory, with Lyra serving as liaison and guardian. Elias would lead the scientific team, focusing on collaborative study rather than exploitation. When the others had departed, Forlag and his hunters returning to their village, Rostova and most of her team to their base camp, Lyra and Elias stood alone among the ancestors' pillars. The fragments of the sunstone glaive lay scattered around them, catching the last rays of sunlight. What will you do now? Elias asked gently. Lyra knelt and gathered the largest pieces of her broken weapon. Find a new path, one that honors what I was while becoming what I must be. And the 20th mark? Elias touched his own shoulder, where Kthar would have placed the symbol of a successful hunt. Lyra smiled faintly. Perhaps some hunts end not in death, but in understanding. Over the following months, Lyra moved between worlds. She established a small dwelling at the border between the research station and Kthar territory, belonging fully to neither, yet connecting both. Elias worked tirelessly to ensure TerraCorp honored its agreements, his genuine respect for Xylos gradually influencing even the most profit-focused executives. Lyra used vines from the Whispering Woods to bind the fragments of her sunstone glaive. The weapon would never again be used for hunting, but she carried it as a symbol of her journey and her new purpose. The 19 marks on her arm remained, but instead of seeking a 20th kill, she sought a 20th understanding, a deeper connection to Xylos that encompassed both its ancient traditions and its potential future. 6 months after the confrontation at the Ancestors' Pillars, Lyra returned to the Kthar village for the first time. She came not as First Blade, but as ambassador, bringing news of discoveries made through cooperation that could help the tribe adapt to changing conditions on Xylos. Forlag received her with formal coldness, but Rorik and many younger Kthar listened with interest and even excitement. You were right, Rorik told her, as she prepared to leave. Change was coming whether we welcomed it or not. Better to shape it than be swept away by it. As she departed the village, Lyra paused at its edge, looking back at the only home she had ever known until recently. Then she turned toward the research station where Elias waited, his work creating a model for how TerraCorp might approach other worlds in the future. Between these 2 points, tradition and innovation, past and future, Lyra had found her place. Not as the deadliest huntress on her planet, but as its most vital connector. That evening, she stood on a ridge overlooking both the ancient Whispering Woods and the gleaming research facility in the distance. The twin suns cast their dual light across the landscape, one blue, one yellow, creating a green glow where they merged. It was how Lyra now saw herself, not fully of either world, but something new created from both. She raised her bound glaive toward the horizon, where calculations showed a third celestial body would soon appear to create the convergence, the night of 3 lights that heralded great change for Xylos. The fractured sunstone caught the fading light, its broken pieces now united in a new configuration, stronger in its scars than in its former perfection. Lyra smiled. The hunt was over. The true work had just begun.